Good Tuesday evening, everyone. I am Joe Martucci here for another edition of Tidal Flooding Talk brought to you by the New Jersey Coastal Coalition. You can check out everything we're doing with the Coastal Coalition at njcoastalcoalition.com. We are a group of New Jersey floodplain communities that meet monthly in a workshop setting to discuss common municipal flooding issues. In short, we help to lower residents' flood insurance rates through increasing our community rating system scores, which is a FEMA program. So again, I'm Joe Martucci. Joined with me just in the nick of time, my co-host, meteorologist Dan Skeldon, and our guest for today. He is the director of the New Jersey Flood Institute, which is the research arm of the Coastal Coalition, Dr. Bill Thomas. Dan, good to be with you here on this Tuesday night. Welcome.
Yeah, he's saying nothing gets done if it wasn't for the last minute. So I'm glad I get on just in the nick of time. Dr. Thomas, great to see you again.
Hi, Dan. I'm glad you're feeling a little well enough to do this.
Well, I'll let Joe do a lot of the asking tonight as I have a couple of weathercasts to get through tonight and a voice that's been going downhill all day. But I never try to miss a episode of Tidal Flooding Talk. So great to be with you, fine gentlemen, and let's get underway.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm happy to do as much as possible. And Dan being the moral support here for tonight. If you are watching on Facebook, you can leave a comment or a question in the notes there. If you're watching on trax57.com, our broadcast partner, or if you're watching on my YouTube channel, you can go to our Facebook page and leave a comment there as well. So, Dr. Thomas, you have been with the Coastal Coalition and the New Jersey Flood Institute for a while. Let's just start with this. You're in an elevator with somebody and they ask, what is the New Jersey Flood Institute and what do you do with the Flood Institute, Bill? What would you say about that?
I'd say the Flood Institute tries to leverage the soft power of education to reach as many people as they can in floodplain communities. As anybody that lives in New Jersey knows now, we all live in a floodplain community. It may not have been that 20 years ago, but given the violence of the storms we're getting, even inland communities that looked pretty safe. For example, anything around the Passaic River has been inundated a number of times. And down here at the shore, we're getting more and more what we call high tide nuisance flooding. So that if you're new to the shore and you're not salty enough to really care about what the moon's doing and king tide, high tide sort of stuff, you'll get salty enough soon because you're going to wake up to water in the streets when it didn't rain because it's coming back through the outflow pipe. So we try to reach as many people as possible, as efficiently as possible. And that's one of the reasons we have a show like this to work through because you guys both reach a lot of people. And that's all we can ask is, we can't turn the water around, and it's living on a barrier island. There's no way in the world we're going to raise the whole island, even though if you've been down there, you've seen the houses raised. The cars can't get raised and the sidewalks can't get raised. So we got to get people around. And the best way to do that is for them to understand what they're up against and move their car accordingly so that they don't get flooded. Get their kids out of school in time so they don't wade through the water. I think you get it. But again, that's what we do. We try to provide a one-stop shop for anything you want to know about flooding, whether it's how to prepare for an emergency or or what's going on in the rest of the world.
Go ahead, Dan. Go ahead.
Bill, there's so many different ways to reach people nowadays. So many different social media sites, so many people that aren't on social media. So, what types of outreach? And I'm sure there are many and vary. You don't have to go over all of them, but you just give us a little bit of an idea of what type of outreach you participate in to try to reach the most number of people and also a varied segments of the population.
Sure. Well, we've got the standard array of social media sites to reach that crowd: Facebook, Instagram, the X account. We have our monthly meetings, right? When we're in, we not only bring people that talk about flooding, but try to reach as many municipalities and the local decision makers, county and state, as well as municipal as possible, so we can share what we're learning, as well as best practices that our members have come up with. Thirdly, we try to reach out to schools. I've just completed about 6 weeks of work on a couple grants that will enable us to go into communities around New Jersey that probably don't know their flooding history and prevent, I'm a big believer in stories and the power of a good story to get you to remember things. Yesterday I was getting some blood taken, and, I'm one of those guys that can't stop talking, and I was a teacher forever. So you try to take something as, boring as how did the methane ring get named, and tell a story about the guy falling asleep on the bus and dreaming of a snake with its tail in its mouth. Or how Einstein, a lot of things happened on buses, believe it or not. Einstein figured out relativity on it. So anyway, we try to bring that power of storytelling to schools, but of course um, we do it by having people like you and Joe go to schools for us, and we're trying to do more of that. So the short version is we try to hit as many of these as we can, realizing that every demographic matters to us, and certain demographics, like if you're my age, you're probably on Facebook. If you're my daughter's age, you probably have never been on Facebook. But we got to reach her too. So we're trying to learn as we go and hit as many sites as possible. But if you hit New Jersey Coastal Coalition, you can see us on several platforms, and that'll get you to the Research Institute if you want to dig deeper.
Dr. Thomas, you live at the Jersey Shore. You live in Atlantic County, right on the coast there. In your time, being at the shore, right? Have you noticed changes? Have you, and I don't mean just, hey, I've seen more water, but have you noticed more resiliency to flooding? And how does that parlay into the work that the Coastal Coalition's been doing?
Yes, I have seen more resiliency, and part of that is due to FEMA and people like the Coastal Coalition working, because a lot of our members in the Coastal Coalition are local uh, community leaders, especially political leaders, elected folks. So by helping our local members work through the FEMA flood insurance program, we've helped our folks become more resilient by adopting codes and warnings and literature and things like that actually play into the CRS system, which is the community rating system FEMA uses to establish your flood insurance rates. By gaining points in this system, which we, with our members, work on constantly, finding new ways to get more points so that our rating is increased, and that way we can offer you savings on your flood insurance. So that's primarily, that was basically what we were founded to do, and we were also founded in response to Sandy. And of course, if you look around, Sandy encouraged a lot of people to take this sort of thing seriously, that, just guessing, but there were a lot of stuff at the Jersey Shore that was at sea level. And Sandy took care of that all up and down the coast. Well, that really brought everybody to, Jesus, for lack of a better analogy. So they took it seriously. And you go around the shore now, the new building codes, which play into the FEMA, the community rating system and the flood insurance system, most things start, almost 15 feet above the curb. So your possessions are out of the way now. As I said earlier, the problem is the streets are still at ground level, and that's where your cars are, and there's nothing we can do about that right now. But I think most people, especially builders and community leaders, are aware of the need to get as much out of the water as you can, because when it comes, there's nothing we can do. There is no barrier we can provide.
Do you find, Dr. Thomas, that storms like Sandy and Jonas, we had kind of a rough decade. Even Sandy, though, was coming up on 13 years ago. Jonas, 9 years ago. Storms like that kind of wake people up. The Coastal Coalition was born as a result of one
Right.
of those storms.
Right.
So even though they are horrible, I don't want to say you need one of these storms, but
No,
um,
I'm on you talking to the choir.
right.
Yeah.
Right. They do serve a purpose and kind of just wake people up to the possibility that it can happen here.
Amen. It's probably, Dan, my biggest frustration is the short memories of human beings. Everything's new to us constantly, it seems. And 13 years ago, of course, I know I wasn't here, but I was in northern New Jersey running a school of conservation, and we were out of power for 16 days. That you know, brought, when I was talking to the people I worked for about generators, all of a sudden it focused the mind, as did a gate valve to lower the lake because the flooding destroyed the bridge. And then that kind of stuff, we all know it takes a while to move people, but it's very frustrating that without this, it seems like a television show we're in. We watch Florida get beat up in the last couple of storms, but what's that doing to me? Nothing. And people have, the communities here are chock full. There's no houses for sale that aren't $1 million. And I always kid my wife, the only good investment we made is our house because we couldn't afford to live here today. But it's worth 5 times what we paid for it. Great. And I can't live here if I sell it, but at least I have something that's worth more than it was. But I really believe that if we could fake a storm and have a studio storm, it would be wonderful every year just to bring people up to snuff on what they need to do. I think another problem that has evolved from the Sandy storm is that when I lived in Ventnor years ago and then went on to become a college professor. But when I lived here, it looked like a lot of shore communities, marginal things where your grandma and grandpa still had a place to shore. And it was, it wasn't a brand new home. And a lot of that stuff was wiped out. Well, a lot of the houses that are here now don't seem to have anybody living in them year round. They seem to be summer residences or rentals. Well, that makes it a lot easier if you're in City Hall because you've got this brand new rateable that brings in tax dollars with no kids going to school and nobody raising hell year round, which, Old Ventnor was a regular city. We had people of all, stripes and the police were busy all year. It was just a regular town. Now, you can pretty much bowl here till May on any street. There's nobody on the street. And we kid in my street, if the door opens at 9 o'clock, everybody's at the front door because it's so quiet. That said, that poses another set of problems for people like the coalition because the storms don't typically occur in July. So when we're packed and most of the money people who can afford the $1 million summer home are here, we have nothing to sell. They're just enjoying the sunshine. When they go home and things get rough, their cars aren't here. So it's hard to, without a real storm to come in and actually do some damage, it's hard to sell people on preventive measures that they don't see themselves as needing because it's nice when they're there. So, and they're back wherever they are, Philadelphia, New York, or other parts of New Jersey when things get lousy in September. So that's another something we've got to work through because as we evolve, and the towns evolve, we have to find ways to reach everybody we can.
Right. But we are doing that. I mean, we have our monthly meetings with the New Jersey Coastal Coalition. A lot of the homes are raised at this point in time, and they just continue to. But to your point about the pricing out of, full-time residents, I mean, this is, from 2020 to 2021, home values rose anywhere from 15 to 20% here that I'm reading. And then even in the last 12 months, the home value in New Jersey went up another 8.2%. So, we're getting and, I don't have to say this, at the shore, these houses are getting bigger and bigger, right? And they are getting elevated, which is good against the flooding. But to your point, Bill, we're talking about more people who aren't at the shore year round who may or may not be aware of what's, going on here. So, how do we balance, or in your view, how do we balance, making sure the dwindling number of homeowners who are year round at the shore are, protected against the coastal flooding while also educating people who might only be here 20, 30 days a year that this is something that, is serious as well?
We're kind of taking a two-pronged, well, more than a two-pronged approach, right? We're hoping like when this goes national and NBC picks it, I'm just teasing. But
NBC did pick us up. Remember, we had a news story on our
That's right. That's right. We had a news story.
4.0.
Yes. And folks like you and Dan have followers. So people who are interested in weather are getting looped into flooding. But I think the biggest thing we're going to have going for us, hopefully this year, is a really intense effort to get into the schools and provide not only historical flooding information, but a hands-on sort of thing that the kids can wrap their minds around, especially middle school children, and begin to pay attention to as they grow up and hopefully live here. Yeah, I'm old enough to remember when people threw stuff out the windows when they're driving, littering. And you may, if you're old as I am, the Iron-Eyed Cody shedding a tear when the Native American looked at the landscape covered with it. Well, they reached the kids, right? And my child, it was water conservation. So if I'm running the sink while I'm brushing my teeth, I got a lecture. I believe that's how this stuff gets done. Mom and dad are busy, but once the kids start to talk about this stuff at the dinner table and what they can do, and did you know, Mom, that the water was over the stop sign down at the corner during Sandy? What? Yeah, water was 6 feet in the street here. Oh my goodness. Then we'll have a chance. And I believe that when you get good teachers, storytellers, communicators in with these things, um, they pluck a heartstring with people. People want to know. It's just there's a lot of things to know. And I'm guessing you guys, because meteorology can get pretty geeky, but it's also everywhere all the time, and everybody's really interested in the weather. Depending on it, there's a sliding scale, obviously, but they're interested. And for example, just to tell a story, someone was asking me, because my time here was basically with boat builders and people who had lived here all their lives, so they're pretty salty. But even they said, in Sandy, they realized they didn't know where the manhole covers were. So you think you're walking down the street and the next minute you're gone. There's no amount of prep. There's no amount of, I know the ocean, it's going to help you then. So they said, you know what? I got out of here. I knew I should move. And when those people you start to tell those stories and put names on them that local people know and respect, you really, I think you start to get through that, uh, Dr. Bill said that, he was walking down the street and he saw somebody disappeared into a manhole. And mom and dad know what that means. Little kids don't quite know what that means, but that's the last day on earth if you're not careful. So I think that's going to be our biggest way into folks is they're going to start to grow up knowing that they have to pay attention to flooding. I mean, for example, Atlantic City floods 8 to 10 times up until recently. By 2030, they think it'll be 20 to 35 times a year, just in nuisance flooding. And by 2100, we're talking about once a week. Well, once that happens, holy moly, we've got some problems. So anyway, I believe in the power of storytelling and education. And I think we're going to start to get to the next generation, as well as teachers who will enjoy putting this stuff in class because it's exciting. Floods are exciting. Weather's exciting, right?
Yeah, weather is exciting.
Yes. So I think there's a powerful story to be told. I just think we've got to have, once we get in there, we'll do our job and we'll start to build a coalition. But I again believe that, I grew up not littering and paying attention to environmental things because that started when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And it was of interest and it became part of my life. And I think we're on our way to doing the same thing.
Right. Yeah, this is a good time to just talk a little bit about one of the new programs we have at the New Jersey Coastal Coalition. It has our web app 4.0. So we did create our own app in conjunction with Weston Solutions. They've all been funded through FEMA grants, so thank you to FEMA for that. The fourth edition, though, what it allows residents, so all of you watching, and people within the administration, your local administration, is allow for automatic updates relating to flooding. Web app 1, 2, and 3.0, someone at town hall or police or OEM had to trigger this flooding alert. Not anymore. This is automatically generated, and you see information from where the safest places to park are, those high areas in town, to evacuation routes, to other things around you, to what level of tide waters does it take to flood your block. If you go to njcoastalcoalition.com, you can check out all this emergency information. We just released it in January. We were in Longport. Bill and I were there. We were on NBC 10 talking about it as well. We have Longport and Commercial Townships. So Longport's in Atlantic County, Commercial Townships in Cumberland County that were our first adapters. And right now we have over 10 additional towns in the state that are working towards getting this done for your community. It's free to the town. It's free to you as the homeowner or the property owner. and it's all done through the New Jersey Coastal Coalition. So, I'm proud of it. I think it's a great tool. When I do a lot of community outreach to our Coastal Coalition towns, and I would say at least 50% are like, wow, this is great, especially when they know it's automated, because they knew about the previous 3 versions. When they hear it's automated, I was just in Middletown in Monmouth County for a meeting, and they were like, their eyes opened up. They were like, this is fantastic. And Middletown, is not a town that is a barrier island. There's coastal parts, but it's not a barrier island as well. So anyway, Dan, I think you might have a question there before you cut out, but if you don't, I can ask, but otherwise it's all you. Dan, can you hear us?
I can, yeah. I'm sorry, but I apologize for popping in and out on camera. I was going to echo Dr. Thomas's idea about, I know I visited hundreds of schools throughout South Jersey, throughout New Jersey and Pennsylvania. I know, Joe, you're big in schools as well. And tidal flooding is not something that was ever taught in those lessons, at least not, for the years I was on my school tour. So I think it's never too early to introduce, that term, flooding in general, and let the education begin young. Like Dr. Thomas said, weather is fascinating. It sparks curiosity. These kids take this curiosity home to their parents, and the education is just contagious. So 100% agree that that is an avenue that can't be explored enough.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And our goal is to get more community outreach as we go into the second half of the year. That is definitely for sure. Let's just switch topics for a little bit, Dr. Thomas, because I always am amazed by your stories. In your career, you've done many different things. One of the most interesting things I think anyone could ever say is that they are an expert on Papua New Guinea. I hope I said that right. But
Papua.
What's that?
Papua.
Papua. See, I didn't even know. But
Nobody knows. That's why I'm an
Asia,
expert.
that's why you're the expert. That's right. Between
Right.
Indonesia and Australia, I don't think this has anything to do with coastal flooding. I think it's pretty mountainous there. Although you might correct me if I'm wrong. But just tell us how you got interested in that, and like what's like the cool. What should people know about your time there? I always love to bring this up when I chat with you.
Well, just quickly, they're having a cyclone right now.
Oh,
And
okay.
it's that cyclone's just hit them, and because the damage there is, money wise, a lot less than it is here, but it's about to hit Brisbane, where they think like 30,000 residents will be displaced. Um, it's a bomb, it's a monster. But the thing in Papua New Guinea, Papua New Guineans are used to uh, environmental disturbances. 6 tectonic plates meet to form that island, so it's always rubbing and moving. The old buildings, especially, are flexible, so I've awakened with many an earthquake there. You get knocked,
How's
well,
that?
what's that? And it was just an earthquake. There's nothing to break, so it was great. But yeah, they're subject to the same things we're going through. I get, um, the reason I got to go to Papua New Guinea at first was that my professor had written his dissertation on cannibalism accusations. I had been there on my own. They were going back to follow up to try to figure out what exactly was going on. And I said, well, I've been there. I'll go back. And the story I always tell the kids is they don't like white meat, so I'm safe. But the you know the they still have a terrible problem with witch killing, and witches in Papua New Guinea are typically women that are single or can't be defended by their um, men. It's just a wild accusation that witches eat someone's insides. No one bothers to check up on it. It's a way
Oh
of
my God.
intimidating other people. But anyway, I was there first to do that, and then my real interest is in how do you get from people living in their environment to actually working to conserve it. So I learned from the locals what they knew and how they saw human activity impacting biodiversity. And from that, we've made a model that's got 2 really big conservation areas. When things settle down in the area, right now there's a lot of tribal fighting. We'll have 2 of the biggest conservation areas in that part of the world. And this is the Amazon of the Pacific. So it's endlessly fascinating as far as critters go, more birds than anywhere but South America, and 1,000 languages. There's 5,000 languages spoken on Earth. And so you go there and there's 1,000 different cultures, each as different as Spanish is from Chinese. So
You know,
fascinating place. Never get tired of going there. It's a little hairy sometimes, but what a privilege it's been to spend my life, going out there. And the biggest thing too, you learn when you go to everything's stripped bare there in a lot of sense. So when you go to a meeting, a tribal council, they're doing politics too. And you begin to realize the importance of consensus and how you come to that. Where, you don't get that class in America often. And, political things are limited here sometimes to a council of 4. Well, there's a council of 44 there that have to agree. And, all the importance of hearing people out, the importance of um, just shutting your mouth and listening,
mm,
which is a lost skill for many of us, right? That, that's been those things have changed my life. In addition, every time you go, something happens. You go, boy, if you and I were having a beer right now, there's a great story to be told.
okay, well, maybe our next Tidal Flooding Talk with you, we'll do it at a bar somewhere, and we'll
There
have
we
a live
go.
audience, and we'll talk about it. We did used to do it at the Irish Pub in Atlantic City for a number of years, and
Right.
I actually, when I was doing a little research earlier today, so I didn't know that Papua
Yes.
New Guinea has the 11th most airports in the world. Did you know
Yeah,
that?
there's no roads.
Oh, so that's why. So it's like Alaska, right?
Yes, it is. The
Wow.
capital is not connected to the rest of the country. There's one main road that goes up the spine of the mountains, and it's constantly subjected to earthquakes and landslides. Um, and that's what connects the folks I've worked with, known as the Hewa. They're out at the headwaters of one of the major rivers there. There are no roads. The first airstrip was put in the 90s. When I first went in, you had to walk and carry everything. Looked like an old Tarzan movie
Yeah.
with carriers and everything. And yeah, there's still huge roadless areas there that are serviced by helicopter and small airplanes. Um, and that's really the only way in and out. Luckily, most Papua New Guineans are self-sufficient, especially in those really rural areas. They don't need anything except healthcare, and they'd like to have schools, most of them. But yeah, and if one of these days I'll bring a slide in of some of the airstrips. If you're afraid, I mean, that's a what? That's an airstrip. It's like yeah, it's on the top of the flat part of the mountain. It's about
Yeah.
20 feet wide, and if they miss it, they miss it.
So
They
you got
don't
some
fly.
skilled.
One thing, there's no flying at night too. So that's
Uh,
always interesting because when you're there and you're often in an airport and people get antsy because they're used to Western schedules and everything, we got to get going. Blah, blah, blah. It's like, if these guys don't want to leave, you don't want to leave
mm.
because you don't have to take off, but you have to land. And with no lights, it's sad to say, I've known 2 pilots that are dead now. And of
Oh,
course, everybody on board's dead because they turned up the wrong valley
right.
and there's no way out.
Oh, geez.
It's a dead end. And then, so it's, it's exciting, but you know, it's
Uh,
not anybody, everybody.
yeah. All right. Well, hey, Dr. Thomas, always a very a wide-ranging conversation when we
There we
chat with
go.
you. Yeah, and thank you for coming on for our Tidal Flooding Talk. This wraps up our March 4th edition of it. We have some severe weather possibly in New Jersey tomorrow from 5 to 10 p.m. So be on the lookout for that, everybody. It's a low risk, but something to talk about. Otherwise, we'll be back with you next Tuesday with another Tidal Flooding Talk brought to you by the New Jersey Coastal Coalition at njcoastalcoalition.com.
Thanks, Joe.